You wake up in a quiet room. There are no windows, no clocks, no doors. Only your thoughts echo in the space around you. In that moment, you're not in a prison. Together, we walk slowly through stillness, through philosophy, through the deep waters of thought. Today, we meditate on a single idea from the Roman emperor and philosopher Marcus Aurelius. The soul becomes dyed with the color of its thoughts, a sentence written centuries ago, yet echoing with unnerving precision into the age of social media, burnout, and anxious mornings. Nor are you in a palace, you're in something far more powerful, a reality sculpted by your mind. The first thing you see when you open your phone is breaking news, a viral video, a text message, or a reminder. Like dye soaking into fabric, our repeated thoughts become our nature. It can darken or illuminate. In this worldview, reality is shaped from within. Life isn't about events, it's about the meaning we give to them. They tint everything we see. A soul steeped in envy will begin to find injustice in every blessing. The news cycle thrives on outrage. Social media thrives on comparison. Our attention is sliced, our focus diluted, and our thoughts dyed, tinted, saturated by what we consume, much of it through flickering screens. Articles, emails, memes, headlines, each one a small drop of color into our inner dye. Over time, these drops accumulate. They form patterns, some helpful, some toxic, but nearly all unnoticed. You might leave a relationship certain you're not enough, not because of any truth, but because the mental dye of self-doubt had already taken hold. Marcus himself lived in a time of war, betrayal, loss, and illness. As Marcus himself advised, philosophy is not about lofty theories. It is about practice, vigilance, inner hygiene. It is about protecting your soul from being dyed by the world's panic and noise. The Stoics remind us, our thoughts are ours, if we have the courage to own them. Have they been colors of envy, resentment, comparison? Or have they been shades of patience, gratitude, and clarity? Yet he chose to return, again and again, to the idea that we are responsible for our inner climate. A soul soaked in fear will see threat in every shadow. We remember insults more than praise. We fixate on threats more than safety. To the quiet tents of the Roman frontier, to the notebook of an emperor, to a man who practiced mastery of the mind, not for glory but for peace. And let us ask again, will it be a prison or a palace? Will it be a sanctuary of calm or a battlefield of chaos? And the more we dwell on these patterns, the more they take root not just in our moods, but in our perception of reality itself. And the weight of an empire managed to preserve a clear mind, untainted by fear or hatred. And that lens can be sharpened, distorted, cleaned, or darkened depending on what we choose to focus on, entertain, and revisit each day. What you believe becomes what you see, and what you see becomes what you live. But a soul nourished by clarity, by purpose, by reason, it sees the world as it truly is, not as its fear wishes it to be. Everything is fast, loud, demanding your attention. In this world of constant stimulation, have you ever stopped to ask what is shaping your inner landscape? But also a student of philosophy who feared the corruption of power more than he feared death. He understood that the most enduring battles are fought not on distant fields, but in the unseen corners of the human mind. What thoughts are you letting in? And more deeply, what thoughts are quietly shaping you? Whether that space becomes a sanctuary or a cage depends not on walls, but on thought. And in that instant, the Stoics would whisper, your mind is the architect of your world, but as private notes to himself. Meditations is not a book of performance, it's a dialogue with his own soul, written under candlelight between battles, intense during long campaigns on the frontier. Welcome to Reflection from our channel where ancient wisdom meets the noise of the modern day. Pause for a moment and take a step outside yourself. Let us begin where all Stoic practice begins, not with changing the world, but by noticing the colors that our own thoughts have painted across the canvas of our days. The quote we re-exploring, "The soul becomes dyed with the color of its thoughts," comes from the Meditations of Marcus Aurelius, written not for an audience. Marcus Aurelius was not only the most powerful man of his time, the emperor of Rome. This line, "The soul becomes died," is more than poetic. It's a warning. It tells us that thoughts are not passive. They are agents of transformation. To the Stoics, the mind is not a mirror but a painter. It does not merely reflect the world it interprets, alters, reframes. Fast forward to today. In an era of endless content, scrolling habits, and information overload, our thoughts are being shaped every waking moment, often without consent. It's not just theory. Psychological studies on negativity bias show how the human brain, for survival reasons, is more sensitive to bad news than good. You might walk into a meeting thinking everyone is judging you, not because they are, but because the thought has already colored your soul. In this way, the Stoic insight proves prophetic. Thought is not only inner monologue, it is the lens through which we construct our world. Let us take a step even deeper. The average person today consumes between 70,000 and 100,000 words of content daily, and yet, the Stoic ideal stands as a reminder. You may not control what appears on the screen, but you always have the power to choose how you respond. You are not the storm, you are the sailor. And though the winds howl, you hold the rudder. Now, consider this. If your soul, a kind of fabric, and every thought is a drop of color, what colors have you allowed to settle this week? This is not a question to induce guilt, but to awaken awareness. Because what you think repeatedly becomes what you believe. So let us return to that silent room, the one we began in. The one with no windows or clocks, the one inside your mind. And more importantly, how did Marcus Aurelius, an emperor surrounded by war, betrayal, what habits, what reflections, what choices helped him protect the colors of his soul? That is where we go next. In the year 170 CE, as plagues spread and the frontiers of the Roman Empire burned with rebellion, Marcus Aurelius, the emperor of the known world, sat inside a modest tent along the Danube. He wasn't writing philosophy for others. He was writing to survive. He was writing to remain whole in a world collapsing around him. To be died is not to be lightly touched, but to be saturated. Marcus was warning us. Our thoughts seep in. They don't pass by harmlessly. They stay, they stain. And if we are not careful, they become us. He didn't write from luxury but from battlefields. He was surrounded by illness, treachery, loss, and political chaos. And through it all, he returned to the quiet, daily act of guiding his thoughts, of cleansing them, of choosing what to let in. When everything external seemed out of control, he turned inward again and again toward the only thing he believed he could master, his thoughts. You had to practice it every day, like tending a garden or sharpening a blade. They warned that thoughts, if left unguarded, grow wild. That resentment, fear, or arrogance, if indulged, become habitual. And that over time, they take the shape of your life, especially if you have within you such thoughts that by looking into them you immediately find ease. He knew the soul could rot amid palaces, that fear could thrive in emperors, and so, he returned to the one fortress that cannot fall unless we abandon it, the mind. We become reactive, we become anxious, jealous, bitter, often without knowing why. To notice your thoughts the way you might notice what you're eating. If thought is the beginning of character, and character shapes how we experience the world, then what happens when we begin to think deliberately? What changes when we stop consuming thoughts passively and instead begin crafting them, choosing them, living by them? To notice what colors we are letting into our soul, into the real practice of thought, where what you think becomes how you live. To diet, not with reaction, but with reason, not with fear, but with understanding, not with complaint, but with clarity. To ask, is this nourishing? Is this harmful? Is this mine or something I absorbed without question? We start responding not to the present moment, but to 1,000 lingering impressions stored in the background of the mind. And then, like Marcus warned, the soul changes its color and we no longer recognize ourselves. That peace wasn't a gift, it was a result. The result of daily effort, daily honesty, daily choice. The weight of Rome rested on his shoulders. The future of the empire was uncertain. But how you react to it that matters. Epictetus did this in a classroom, without property or title. Seneca did this while facing death with grace. If they could practice this discipline amid their storms, can we do it in ours? Because he knew they would follow him, echo in him, and eventually become him, and that is what Stoicism invites us to do. Not to be emotionless, but to be mindful, to be stewards of our inner condition. He taught students to sort every impression, every thought, every emotion, and ask, is this within my control? If not, let it go. If yes, shape it with virtue. Soldiers were dying, allies were faltering, and the very stability of civilization trembled. We dwell on insults long after the world has moved on, and those interpretations are shaped, over time, by the quality of our thoughts. By the colors we let seep into the soul, emotion becomes habit. To discard what was unworthy, to repeat what was wise, and to reinforce, again and again, the thoughts that bring clarity rather than chaos. Habit becomes identity, and identity shapes reality. Marcus didn't know brain chemistry, but he knew the soul. Seneca's reminder was simple. The mind is the origin of suffering more often than the world is. And yet, within that tent, by the light of a simple oil lamp, he speaks of emotional tone. Thought carries a vibration: fear, anger, envy, joy, gratitude. These aren't neutral. Not in the religious sense, but in the Stoic one, the seat of reason, of choice, of identity. To Marcus, the soul was the essence of what we are and what we do with what happens to us. If that soul becomes stained by toxic thought, then no matter the outer condition, power, wealth, or position, we are already lost inside. Over time, they tint our perceptions, twist our memories, and determine how we interpret every experience that follows. Thought, to Marcus, was not passive, it was powerful, almost alchemical. Marcus did not record military strategy or political declarations, he wrote to himself. You have power over your mind, he penned, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength. In that same collection of reflections, now known as meditations, he left behind the line we re-meditating on today. The soul becomes dyed with the color of its thoughts. This was not poetic musing, it was personal strategy. To endure betrayal, death, war, and illness, Marcus relied on a singular principle that what lives in the mind will eventually color everything. Let's pause and look closely. The word dyed is powerful. It suggests absorption, permanence. When he speaks of color, he means more than hue. And then, the soul. Marcus Aurelius was not a philosopher by profession. He was a man who ruled an empire while writing to preserve his sanity. The Stoics believed that philosophy was not a subject, but a craft. Marcus wasn't alone in this conviction. Epictetus, once enslaved, taught that it's not what happens to you. Seneca echoed the same wisdom. We suffer more in imagination than in reality. We project doom into the future. We rehearse failure before we act. The Stoics relied in this, that the human experience is not dictated by events, but by how the mind interprets them. Centuries later, modern neuroscience echoes these ancient truths. What you focus on, you reinforce. Repeated thought patterns form neural pathways. Thought becomes emotion. This is why he treated philosophy as a kind of spiritual discipline, a way to return each day to the center, to examine what had entered his mind. He wrote, "Know where you can go is more peaceful, more free than your own soul." Consider the contrast. The most powerful man in the world, surrounded by armies, temples, and gold, yet he placed no trust in those things. Marcus chose his thoughts the way one might choose companions carefully. Imagine walking into your workplace tomorrow. The emails are already piling up. The clock seems to move too fast. Someone interrupts you mid-thought, and the familiar pressure begins to build behind your eyes. Most people respond to this kind of environment by leaning on habit, hurrying, reacting, judging, doubting. Marcus Aurelius himself led an empire, yet wrote, Ambition means tying your well-being to what other people say or do. We misinterpret a friend's silence. We feel hurt by tone, distance, forgetfulness, not selfishly but clearly. Your peace does not need the approval of someone else. When a partner is lost in their own worries, you don't need to take it personally. The inner world, the sanctuary no one else can enter unless we let them in. Marcus called this the citadel of the soul. Know where you can go. He wrote, is more peaceful, more free than your own mind, especially when it contains the right thoughts. And what are the right thoughts? Not empty positivity, but grounded reason, not denial, but discernment, but by small, consistent practice, each morning, before the noise begins, you write down 3 thoughts you want to carry, perhaps patience, curiosity, steadiness. These are your colors for the day, not escape, but the strength to stay present. Replace it gently with one you've chosen. When a friend forgets to respond, you don't need to spiral into assumptions. They gave us tools to meet life as it is with clarity and courage. In the modern world, these tools are more needed than ever. The mind, left unguarded, absorbs everything. Were they mine? Were they helpful? Do they reflect the person I hope to become? If not, the Stoics offer no blame, only the invitation to begin again. But with awareness, we begin to curate what we carry. In the moment you choose to breathe instead of lash out. In the instant you remind yourself, this is not within my control, but how I think about it is. This simple review is not for guilt, but for awareness. Each day becomes a new stroke on the canvas of your character. It is in love, when hurt tempts you to close, but you choose to remain open. And in that process, we reclaim something vital, the authorship of our own soul. It is in solitude, when fear tempts you to numb, but you choose to feel. Instead, you breathe, observe, and remember, I do not control what they feel. I only control what I allow into my mind. It doesn't need perfect timing or flawless harmony. Your role in any relationship is to bring clarity, presence, patience, not to control the other, but to control your perception of them. The criticism we inherited in childhood, the stories we repeat without question, the thoughts we let echo unchecked, unchallenged. A Stoic doesn't shut these down. A Stoic listens, and then asks, is this thought helping me live a life of virtue, or is it pulling me away? In this way, we prevent our thoughts from painting others with false colors, seeing hostility where there is only distraction, or insult where there is misunderstanding. Like a craftsman shaping stone, we shape ourselves with our repeated choices. That is what Marcus meant when he spoke of the soul becoming dyed by thought. Over time, we become what we think, not once, but every day, in quiet repetition. But what if the suffering here, too, begins not in the event, but in the thought? Marcus wrote, when you wake up in the morning, tell yourself, today I will meet people who are selfish, rude, deceitful. They are like this because they cannot tell good from evil. This is not cynical, it's preparatory. He's not teaching us to judge others, but to remove the surprise. He's teaching us to enter the day grounded, ready, steady, so we aren't thrown off balance by normal human imperfection. Sanity means tying it to your own actions. What colors the mind in a work setting is not the chaos outside, but the interpretation inside. If you believe every delay is a failure, every correction is shame, then your thoughts will die your day in constant tension. But if you see each task as a practice of presence, each challenge as training, the color of your inner world begins to shift. But a Stoic sees something else. A Stoic begins with a question: which of these things can I actually control? In our professional lives, it's easy to become prisoners of outcomes, promotions, approvals, client reactions, external praise. These things seem to determine our worth. And yet, they lie outside our full control. The Stoics remind us to reorient our focus. Epictetus wrote, do not seek for events to happen as you wish, but wish for events to happen as they do, and your life will go smoothly. This isn't passive acceptance, it's strategic clarity. You control your effort, your discipline, your process, not the applause that may or may not follow. In a competitive environment, thoughts of self-doubt or comparison can quietly undermine our energy. Now let's turn to relationships. Human connection is both a source of joy and often a cause of suffering. The Stoics believed that the reactions of others are not ours to own. Seneca put it simply, you must live for yourself. There's a gentle power in this approach. When someone lashes out, you don't need to retaliate. Which brings us to the most sacred domain of all, the self. We often underestimate the noise we carry inside. The inner world becomes strong not through isolation, but through intention. So, how do we begin? Not by overhauling everything. Not by chasing an ideal. When frustration arises, pause and ask, what color is this thought adding to my mind? Do I want to carry that? If not, release it. Let it drift. At night, reflect. Which thoughts define me today? Which ones led me toward my better self and which ones dim my spirit? Stoicism is not a philosophy of grand declarations. It is one of quiet revolutions. It happens in the pause between stimulus and response. It is in the workplace, when stress tempts you to rush but you choose composure. Marcus, Epictetus, and Seneca didn't give us instructions for a perfect life. We choose what thoughts to plant, what thoughts to water, what thoughts to release. So as we prepare to move into our final reflection, ask yourself gently, what thoughts have I allowed to shape my reality lately? Because the mind is a garden, and every day, every thought is a seed. You wake up, the world has not changed, but something inside you already has. A silent thought, almost invisible, has entered. You don't remember inviting it, but it's there. Thoughts from headlines, social media, passing glances, comparisons. Not harmful in isolation, but repeated. They shape you, your values, your expectations, your disappointments, your sense of what matters, and like dye soaking into fabric, these thoughts are not easily rinsed away. I'm behind, it whispers. Or, it says, I have to prove myself today. Seneca wrote, we suffer more in imagination than in reality, but if you walk in grounded, calm, curious, suddenly the same words, the same tone, land differently. Why? Because your thoughts, your expectations, shaped your experience. This is not magic. This is mind. In other words, our thoughts often create the very burden we seek to escape. But just as we suffer in imagination, we can also heal there. With a shift in perspective, a reorientation of the inner compass. Marcus wasn't trying to write poetry when he spoke of color. He was describing psychological conditioning, centuries before psychology gave it names. Will it be a thought of resistance or acceptance? Will it be one of comparison or enoughness? Will it be fear or stillness? Will it be I must or I am? To a whole day, a year, a life. Imagine a life crafted not by accident, but by deliberate attention to thought. Every morning, the soul awaits your decision. You do not need to control everything to feel in control. You only need to meet each thought like a guest at your door. Ask its name, ask its purpose, and then decide whether it gets to stay. Every morning, the canvas is blank again. He wrote them alone, often in pain, often under pressure. But he wrote them because he knew if he could guide his thoughts, he could guide his soul. And if he could guide his soul, he could meet anything. The Stoic answer is simple. We begin, each day. Not with answers, but with intention. We do not need to control every thought, only to guide the ones we practice. We write, we reflect, we question, is this thought useful? Is it true? Is it helping me live with virtue? Your soul is not Twitter, or breaking news, or passing judgment. Let today be the day you remember peace is not a place. It is a thought, repeated. Let today be the beginning of your return to yourself. Your soul is quiet, patient, waiting for your attention, waiting for your choice. Imagine a soul that, instead of being dyed by fear or bitterness, has chosen daily to be colored by wisdom. That is the life Marcus lived, not perfectly, but purposefully. You brush your teeth, pour your coffee, check your messages, and all of it feels just a little heavier. The more we think something, the easier it is to think it again, gently, like a bird from an open palm. We do not chase it, we do not fight it, we simply choose again. The more we fear, the more familiar fear becomes. The Stoics believed your character is not built in the moment of action, but in the thoughts leading up to it. That 1,000 tiny thoughts prepare you for the one decision that matters. And if those thoughts are wise, courageous, rooted in what you control, then your soul becomes a place of peace. Even in chaos, the more we judge, the more reflexive judgment becomes. But the same is true for gratitude, for stillness, for forgiveness. Thoughts practiced are thoughts multiplied. Why? Because a single thought, like a drop of dye, has already colored the water of your mind. This is what Marcus Aurelius meant when he said, "The soul becomes dyed with the color of its thoughts." He did not mean this metaphorically, he meant it literally spiritually. He knew that a thought is not a flicker, it is a seed. If nourished, it grows roots, spreads branches, and soon becomes the lens through which we interpret everything. Let's pause here. How many thoughts have you absorbed today that were not truly yours? So, the Stoics taught, think deliberately. Choose wisely, train the mind like you train the body. Do not expect clarity without repetition. Do not expect peace without discipline, not to suppress thought, but to notice it, name it, decide if it belongs. Each morning becomes a ritual of choosing the palette of your soul. Will you begin your day with thoughts of scarcity or sufficiency? Will you carry defensiveness or openness? Will you interpret inconvenience as injustice or as training? Modern neuroscience confirms it. Repeated thoughts shape neural pathways. And so we arrive at the central practice. The Stoics never promised ease. They promised resilience, not comfort, but clarity. Imagine this. You walk into a conversation expecting criticism. You find tension even where none exists, now stretch that beyond a moment. So, how do we live this way in a world that is so loud, so quick to provoke, so eager to distract, and if the answer is no, we let it go. Let us summarize the essence. Marcus Aurelius taught that your inner condition, your soul, is shaped by the thoughts you allow to stay. You can't control the world, but you can choose the thoughts that meet the world. And in that choice lies your freedom. So, what thought will you choose today? The answer isn't final. You get to choose again tomorrow, and the next day, and again after that. You do not need to be perfect to be peaceful. When Marcus wrote his reflections, he did not know his words would be read thousands of years later. The world around you will move fast. It will distract, it will tempt, but your mind is not the world. Let today be the day you diet with intention. Thank you for walking this journey with us. See you in the next meditation.